Jack Mardack, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. Extremely excited to be here with you today. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm excited to have a nice conversation. Today, we're going to be exploring how HR leaders can address changing employee expectations in a distributed world. I mean, there's just so much going on right now in terms of virtual work, hybrid work, distributed workforce, a lot of this accelerated by the pandemic, and a lot of things that organizational leaders have to grapple with as they're trying to figure out what makes the most sense for them and for their teams, and navigate shifting employee expectations. We know also right now that it's a really tight labor market, and so employees have options, and so leaders are having to kind of wrestle with what their employees want versus what they want, and sometimes those aren't in line, and the realities of just how to deal with the labor market supply demand issues. As we get started, I wanted to share Jack's bio with everybody. Jack Mardack is deeply inspired by the power of software to change the world and make it a better place. He's been very lucky to get to work alongside some incredibly talented folks and to have had a modest hand in several exceptional outcomes. Jack is presently co-founder at Oyster and working on removing the barriers of global employment. Oyster is the HR platform for globally distributed companies, and their mission is to remove the barriers between talented people and great full-time jobs at a global scale. They believe it should be easy for any company to hire any person, no matter where either is located in the world. And I think that is awesome, a very much needed service, and definitely something that I'm excited to explore with you today. Before we really launch on into the conversation, anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of background or personal context?
Thank you for the kind introduction, John. I think you covered it well. You explained what Oyster is. We are the purpose-built HR platform for globally distributed companies. And our mission is to create a more equal world by allowing companies everywhere to hire people anywhere, as we believe that there's a tremendous opportunity here for positive impact in the world as well. And we're very excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, given the pandemic, I mean, we already saw a trajectory towards increasing virtual work and increasing distributed workforce. That just got accelerated due to the pandemic and people working, really anywhere they wanted to, and almost overnight, the flip of a switch, teams going virtual. And we've also seen this trajectory of the rise of the gig economy, and there's other platforms out there that help organizations line up to rent talent, to get gig workers to come in, in different functional areas and areas of expertise. And so those have been around for a while. What we really do need, though, is, if I'm based here just south of Salt Lake City in Utah, if I'm a global company, what's keeping me from hiring the best talent from anywhere in the world, especially if my team has already gone remote? Why does it matter whether they live in Utah, in California, New York, in India, China, wherever? It doesn't matter. And I think more and more organizations are recognizing that, realizing it. Of course, distributed workforce does come with its own set of challenges and obstacles, but having platforms like yours out there to help line those things up for organizations and employees, it's a wonderful thing. So let's start by talking about some of those challenges. What do you see as some of the biggest roadblocks, the biggest challenges facing distributed teams, and how are you and your team at Oyster trying to address those?
Sure. Well, the main theme here is that functioning as a distributed company, a company that doesn't rely on offices, is only possibly successful if undertaken in an extremely thoughtful and deliberate way. One of the themes that has emerged as a result of the pandemic is what I'm calling the exposure the lack of ownership of the employment experience, right? And so if you'd ask someone who owns sort of the experience that you're having as an employee, is it facilities because they've given you the floor space, your cubicle? Is it IT because they've furnished you with a laptop and that comes installed with a number of collaboration tools? And so yank the rug out from under that office-based experience, and it was very clearly exposed that really no one is purposefully owning this. And so one of the findings of a Future of HR report that we recently published together with 451 Research is that HR is now firmly going to emerge as the owner and, excitingly, the designer of how people work. And so whether that is an office-based choice or whether that is a hybrid scenario, or whether that is fully distributed, knowing that in each form, what we now need is very purposeful and deliberate design, right? So under that framework, the challenges of distributed work, of fully distributed organizations who have no offices to rely on, begin with a purposeful design of how that company wants to work. And so we've set down that path ourselves at Oyster. We started down this path before the pandemic. We were very inspired by the success of some of the pioneers of remote working, GitLab, Automatic, Buffer, a host of others who've been saying, this is amazing, there are benefits here that y'all are not appreciating from your perspective. So we were very much bought into that. And so the journey for us began with installing a head of remote. Our people team has been designed from the ground up with this aim in mind. We didn't assume that our way of working would be merely an adaptation of office-based work. And so it was a blank sheet of paper, very exciting, but also kind of scary. And we've literally designed how we work from the ground up. And that is an approach that we are prescribing to others who are interested in the benefits of fully distributed organizations. We've got lots of content and material to support companies on that journey.
Yeah, well, I really like your emphasis on how this needs to be a unique ongoing conversation within each team, within each organization, because there's really not a one size fits all approach to how we're going to design work. I think I would say that generally, whether you're in person, hybrid, remote, whatever, there's no one size fits all to what, you know, an effective workplace looks like. And certainly with a distributed team, I think that applies even more, because you just have people potentially from all different backgrounds, even more than some of the most diverse workforces that you might already see and experience in the US. With a truly distributed team, I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of how diverse your team can be. And so it's so much just depends on the makeup of the team and what your core values are and what your core mission is, what your objectives are and what you're trying to accomplish. And so just I mean, that probably sounds like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, of course you need to tailor this and make it unique to each organization.
What's really interesting is if you think about the way, and let's focus on knowledge work, right? Because obviously flipping burgers or being a security guard in front of a door is less transformed by all of this. And so we know that what we're talking about here is knowledge work. And if you think about office-based knowledge work, startlingly similarities, startling lack of differentiation in the very different kinds of work. A bank looks a lot like a software company, right? In terms of how people are working, they sit at their desk, they have a laptop, they go into conference rooms, and there's all this unreviewed inertia about how work happens in an office that I think is now, in retrospect, looking back from this remove, rather shocking. Contrast that with what I now think will be the much more purposeful building, designing of how a company works in alignment with what they're working on. And I think that's not a way of thinking that has been in organizations up until now. So that's really exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's just, like you said, there's been so much inertia that nobody's really been challenging the norms and the tradition of what we do and how we do it, right? We just continue to do it the way. Why?
Yes.
Because we've always done it that way. Well, now for, you know, this disruptive period over the course of the pandemic has given us an opportunity to step back and to really just rethink things. And so many of the things that we did traditionally were just stupid. Maybe they served they had a value and served a point at one point in time, but you know, in the modern age, they just aren't necessary anymore. And so for the first time for many people, I think this is an opportunity to really rethink that. So I completely agree. I think that's really, really important. So you also talk about this value shift.
Yes.
You know, the value shift as a result of the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe provide a couple examples, what we're seeing in terms of the value shift of organizations and individuals.
Totally. So the disruption of behavior at macro scale gave us all the opportunity to make do with less and review what's really important to us, and also to also observe very directly the impacts on the environment, on other systems of this dramatic scale down and what had been sort of our fervent, energetic way of working unreviewed for such a long time, right? And so the value shift begins to creep in as people start to think differently about what they care about, the importance of work-life balance, the importance of working for an organization whose values they believe in and are aligned with, giving patronage as consumers to organizations and companies whose values we are aligned with. And so I think there's sweeping behavioral change that touching on consumer behavior, touching on how employers behave, touching on how employees think about who they go to work for. Sweeping change is coming across all of that. For organizations, there's been a lot of discussion recently about the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation is not about the logistics of work. It's not about the where. Sure, considerations about work flexibility is a component of that. It's one of those things that people want now, not as an end to itself, because they realize that they do like being there at 3 p.m. for homework with your child, right? That has become suddenly really, really important, and you want to give emphasis to that. And they're also thinking differently about getting meaning from work. And that is what's driving, I think, everyone thinking it's like, screw this. I'm fed up with not feeling the way that I realize I can feel about the things that I give my day to, including your employment. And I think that's very important for employers to absorb and to digest. And I think that there are very important and large implications for the HR function as a result, as they think about not just the work flexibility and the where of work, but also the basic posture that employers take to the wellness of employees. I think as Americans, we're accustomed to benefits being sort of this net, this contingency into, if something happens, if I get sick, when I need, dental care, et cetera. And I think that's going to change now into a more active, continuous way of thinking about the wellness of your employees, checking in, engagement being much more important, providing access to resources like mental health professionals, for example, as a part of the benefits packages and perks packages that employers are putting together.
Yeah, and certainly one of the positive things that has come out of the pandemic is for many organizations and many leaders, I think they've recognized the humanity of the situation, right? And just the challenges that people are facing and juggling all these different things and trying to balance, and just the mental health strains on many individuals. I've seen so many leaders really step up to the plate to try to do those check-ins and to help people know that they're supported and that they're cared about. And that's really important. And I agree. I think in time that will just become more and more the norm, more and more the expectation of what it means to be a good, effective leader, and to manage your team and to care for and take care of your people. So I think that would be a good change. And you look at, for example, the US, how benefits are perceived in the US versus other parts of the world. I mean, depending on your kind of philosophical point of view, your social point of view, you could see that as better or worse. But definitely there's many countries that for a long time have supported employees in many ways that are much more significant than how we've done it in the US for a long time.
Yes.
So whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I mean, I'll leave that up to you. But I think what we also see is just the trend of, we as employees expect more of our employers. And I find it funny too. I'm a professor, so I teach in a corporate setting, but I also teach at the university. And so often I hear people talk about these darn millennials or Gen Z workers who, they just want feedback, and they want opportunities for advancement, and they have all these expectations, and they're so entitled. And when I hear the things that my younger students say about what they hope to see from their employers, or the problems that they see in their current employers, it's like, I don't see a problem there. I just see people having realistic expectations for what good leadership is. and no longer are they willing to put up with crappy jobs and crappy leaders, jerk bosses, people who don't know how to actually do the things we're talking about to be effective in the workplace. They just have a higher expectation than maybe previous generations did, especially when they're starting out. And I don't think that's entitlement. I think that's just they've learned what good management and leadership is, and they expect to see it. And so whether that's in a distributed workforce or that's in an in-person office setting, they want to see their people rise to the challenge, and they're not willing to put up with a crappy job. They're not willing to put up with, tasks that have no meaning or purpose. They want fulfillment in the work they do. They want opportunities for growth, and they want opportunities to make a difference, to make an impact in the world around them. And the truth is, we can design jobs that way. There are, you can take
companies.
Yeah, you can design companies that way. You can design jobs that way. And it's not just white collar types of work, knowledge work. You can design blue collar work, industrial work, farming work. You can design work to be more meaningful and impactful, and to have intrinsic value for individuals. You just have to be thoughtful about it. And I've seen organizations do this time and time again, where they've been able to transform when they take the time to really think about it, ask their employees what they need and want, what's going to be motivating to them, etc. And in a distributed world, in a virtual world, I think this is as important as ever, because I'm not just fighting for talent within my little geographic location. As an employer, I'm going to be fighting for talent globally. Anyone can work for anyone. And that brings up a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges in terms of the battle for talent, right?
Yes, it's great to hear you characterize the what had been sort of the millennial whine or the millennial complaint as now revealed as really being a thirst for meaning. And among the things that the pandemic has clarified is I think it's going to clarify that millennial narrative and show that millennials were just sort of ahead of the curve a little bit in being the first generation to realize, I want more from my employment experience. And the pandemic has been a catalyst, and I think has distributed that attitude now more broadly than just millennials, which is very exciting. Another thing that has been catalyzed by the pandemic that's extremely relevant here is there will be more impact-driven, meaning-driven, mission-driven companies that are coming into existence as a result of this values shift. I think that reflects a number of different factors. We have for a few years now been able to observe that positive impact at scale, commercial success at scale can in fact intersect. And I think as a result of the pandemic, there's going to be a lot more companies that try to design themselves. Oyster is one that try to design themselves that way so that their success commercially is in line and aligned with and tracking at similar scale with the impact that they are having in the world. So I think there will be more companies that come into existence with purpose at their center, so as to better connect with the talent in the world that is now so much more interested in giving their time, giving their precious energy and effort to companies that matter to them, that are trying to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this isn't new. Nothing we're saying is like earth-shattering, like nobody's ever talked about it before.
It's the acceleration.
It's the acceleration. I've been doing research in this area for about a decade and a half, and I've seen, very clear, persistent desire from employees for decades, based on social science research, survey research, and such. That meaning, purpose, fulfillment, the desire that your work has impact in the world around you. Like, that's been a really important factor for people for generations. But it's just become more and more salient and more of an expectation, as we've come into recent years. And over the last decade, we've just seen that go up even more and more, and the rise of the triple bottom line and corporate social responsibility narratives and stakeholder capitalism and social impact investing, and like all these things have contributed to the narrative that people just want what they do to have significance to the world around them, and they expect their employer to provide those opportunities. And if they don't, they're going to go either start their own business or do gig work where they get to completely choose how and where and when they're going to do work for whom. Or they're going to demand more from their employers. And so this purpose-driven work is just so important. I completely agree. It's not new. We've just seen the trend accelerating in recent years, and it's going to continue as we move forward. And so I suppose this kind of gets me into my last question for today, which is, what are the must-have benefits that the new generation of knowledge workers are looking for? Clearly, they want flexibility. Clearly, they want purpose-driven work. Maybe you can elaborate on that, or anything else that you see.
Sure. So to build on the traditional list of benefits, insurance, I think those things are not going away. So I think we're looking at a net expansion in the scope of benefits, where we're building on what we've had historically in terms of benefits. And in the case of officeless, fully distributed companies, where it certainly isn't the ping pong table. It certainly isn't the stocked jar of gummy bears on the counter in the kitchen. Those things are absolutely irrelevant at this point. So it's a new set of things that employers will come up with to take care of their people where they are, and that includes equipment, ensuring that they have the right access to Wi-Fi and internet. It could be incremental stipends so that they can do things like have a lunch out on the company, or enjoy a delivered meal, or some other perk that is more present, that is more sort of day to day, as opposed to this entirely abstract idea. Very important, but this very abstract notion of I'm insured in case anything happens. I think a big piece of that is going to be caring about mental health. I think we're in the midst of a transformation in the perceptions around. We should all just admit that we're all sufferers, and that we all have our issues, and we all need to lean, and our employers should be the shoulder there when we have those needs that are so universal across all kinds of workers. So I think those are some of the things that are rising in importance now.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And some may say, well, why is this the employer's responsibility? Why should they have to do this? I'm like, well, on the one hand, it's a simple labor market supply demand question. like how are you going to attract and retain the best people? And you got to provide what people demand. But it's also the human case of it all. And just more and more, I think, leaders and employees alike recognizing that, yeah, this is important for everybody. And
this is about the value of human capital, and it's full realization.
Exactly. And so we can't look past this. We can't just say, well, this isn't our responsibility, they should do that. companies need to step up to the plate. Well, Jack, it has just been a real pleasure. I imagine we could go on and on and on because there's so much we could unpack here, but I need to let you get on with your busy day. So before we wrap up for today, and you're welcome back anytime, please feel free to join me again. But before we wrap up for today, any final word and just let people know how they can get connected with you and your team.
Sure. So I'll give shout outs to two cohorts, if you will. To prospective impact entrepreneurs, I would say be inspired. There's never been a more opportune moment to create a company that is about making a difference in the world. There are a number of factors in your favor now. The democratization of access to talent and capital, impact investment as a source of capital is ready and smart now, and knows how to recognize businesses that have that potential. And so I would encourage them to pursue that. And I also want to give a shout of encouragement to people leaders, to HR leaders. I think we're on the threshold of a renaissance of HR, where if we look back on what just happened to IT over the last 10 years, as a result of the value opportunities represented by the shift to the cloud and by the development of value from data, very similar journey, I think, is afoot now for the HR function, where talent is the data. Talent is now the thing that finally, my gosh, and we've been saying it as a platitude, human capital is a company's most important assets. I think that becomes true in the 2020s. And I think it is HR that leads that charge. And so I would say be encouraged, be very inspired. Please visit us at oysterhr.com. We have lots of inspirational and educational and insight-filled content aimed at exactly that transformation narrative for HR. So I would encourage you to check that stuff out. And as far as being in touch with me, I'm Jack at Oyster HR, happy to engage. You can ping me as well on LinkedIn. And this was a total pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. It has been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about Oyster, connect with Jack, find out what he and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.